Hey guys, welcome back. I would like to apologize for my first video because I realized we just dived right into the video without actually giving you a brief introduction about what Python is and what do we use Python for and how is it different from other languages, and most importantly, what am I working on, what interface am I using to work on Python. So let us start a bit with the history of Python. We would know that Python is one of the newer languages that was released. If you consider the fact that Python just turned 30, you can say it's one of the newer languages released. It's not that old, which means it was developed for people like us, for people, us with our advanced technologies, with our new machines. And the main purpose of Python was, for it to make it more code readable, for it to make the code more readable, and for it to have advanced developing properties that will help users like me, you, and other people understand the language better and use it. It is also an obviously object-oriented language, but why would we prefer this language over C or C++? Well, one of the obviously the most biggest reasons is it has a lot of advantages. It has a lot of extensive third-party libraries, such to a point that some of our most top technologies, modern technologies such as Google, IBM, HP, Hewlett Packard, they use Python as well. And why have they all shifted from their original, you can say comfort level languages to Python? Obviously, because some Python is doing something which is better than other languages and which is more, you can say, easy to work with, easy to use. I myself, the first language I studied was C++, which is also an object-oriented language, and I thought, hey, this is easy. But now that I'm reading a bit into Python, I'm like, this is like reading English, like if you read the code for a C++ program that is implementing some sort of, that is using some sort of objects, or that is using C++ object-oriented concepts, you will be like, what is actually going on? First of all, you'll have to go through the hefty process of defining those header files, and then you'll have to implement those classes and objects. And if you similarly read a code for Python, you'll be like, this is like reading English. It's as simple as reading a simple code in English, like a simple English written story. Print this thing, you'll know, okay. And C++, you have to be like C in to take an input, C out to give an output. And then there is also, your limitation to which IDE you're using. For example, C++ has dev and turbo. Turbo is quite old, but dev is used. And, there are certain rules that certain libraries follow, and you have to follow them. And it's not that way with Python. One of the many things I was confused about Python was, why is Python so easy to use? Like, what is this whole thing with editors and IDEs? Because we've worked with languages such as C++, C, Java, that use straight up IDEs, and there's no moving around it. For Java you'd use NetBeans, and for JavaScript you'd use VS Code, and for C Sharp you'd use Visual Studio. And it was kind of like you're limited to one environment. I mean, of course there are other editors, but that's it. They're just IDEs. They're not editors. Sorry, not editors, IDEs. But with Python, you can use editors to just edit your code, and it's like you can say it's limited. The scope is limited. The scope of what you can do with the code, how you can implement it, how you can improve it. It's limited. But with using IDEs such as Jupyter, they have so many libraries. I was literally shocked to read they have these web source applications and everything. You can do any sort of thing with Python. Other languages, they restrict you a bit. Like, you can say some of our oldest browsers were written in C, I guess. Yes, but nowadays everyone is shifting to Python because it is so easy to use. It is easy to use, and it's being used everywhere. It's being used in games, it's being used in application, it's being used in web application, mobile applications. And what is the hype with Python? why why do we feel the need to study Python? We'll be discussing that. So one of the things I noted about Python is that it is not limited to, like when you're coding in C or when you're coding in Java, you have to write everything within a body. Like, there's a local scope, those parentheses, they limit you to a local scope, and then the parentheses outside of those parentheses, they local to you, they local you to that local scope. And one thing I noticed about Python is that it does not have any sort of, it does not have any sort of curly braces or, this stuff. It has indentation, which can be a huge issue if you do not know how to indent. And that was my issue when we first started out in lab. And I guess I hadn't attended the first two labs. And when our sir asked us, I could write the algorithm. I wrote the algorithm, but I could not implement it. Why? Because it was giving me indentation errors. It won't give you typing errors. It will hardly ever give you typing errors. Like, if you know the built-in functions that are used in Python, such as in, as, whatever that stuff is, but if you do not know where to intend and how to intend, you will be genuinely confused. You'll be like, what is going on? What am I doing wrong? And it will keep giving you, like, as all errors are, obviously it will give you a long list of things, and you'll be like, okay, it's giving me an error from line 50 to line 70. What have I done wrong in those 20 lines? It won't actually tell you that, you're missing an indentation. It will just be like, some source is missing, some this is missing, some that is missing, and you'll be figuring that out for yourself. So yeah, there's this thing, you have to be careful with indentation. And I think with the ID, obviously I'm using Jupyter Lite. I think with that, it's such errors are limited because we work in this kind of, no, even here you have indentation problems, I'm sure. Yeah, because I haven't worked with Jupyter either, but yes, I remember working on a small piece of code and it gave me indentation issues as well. And one of the best things about Python is that, as I obviously already mentioned, it's that it's used for web development. It is used for data analysis research. Like, how extensive is this language? How wide and how vast is this language? It is used in artificial intelligence, work testing, and it is also used in scientific computing, numerical computing, like all of these fields. And it's growing so much. Excuse the ambulance. It's growing so much, you have to, it's hard. It's like, I think most people who I've read, they've worked with Python, because I was reading about why people chose to switch from, their comfort languages to Python, and they were like, it's just easy. It cuts more than half of your work into half, and then you're just left with nothing. You just have to, do whatever you want. You don't have to do the extra work, such as putting in parentheses, such as making sure something has a type. And another one of those interesting things about Python is it does not have this type concept. Like, if you give an array, for example, any array, and you just give brace and you just write some sort of things, it will treat it as an object. It will not treat it as an array. It won't assume, or it won't give you an error that, oh, you haven't defined this, you just declared it out of nowhere, and it does not have a type. So that was something really interesting about Python as well. So I guess what I meant to say about those types is that there aren't, we don't have the normal, standardized types of data types in Python, as one would, think, you would assume. So it's like you can say it's like a type-free class. Like, it has some built-in data types, such as dict and list and set and frozen set and tuples, and I think we have a string class as well. I haven't read much about it myself, just, skimmed over the surface, but that's something really interesting. If you do want to mix a lot of information together, you will not have to sit around and make an array that will store your integer data types, and then you make a string that will store your integer plus normal string data type, all of that stuff. So this is something really interesting, and something that I was happy about, because I think as developers, we all struggle with the, okay, now how do I add this particular piece of data into this thing, and without it creating a huge fuss? And I don't want it to treat it as a string, and I don't want to create a whole as object, and I don't want to go through this whole method of being like, create is a object, new object. So I guess that is all for today's video. And I am sorry. This is supposed to be the first video, but I was nervous, and I had to do something. I had to lie, even if it was as simple as, printing my name as I just did. So I am sorry for that. I apologize, and I hope you somehow understand something about Python, that as a totally new person to Python, just like me, I hope you do understand something better about Python than what you already knew. Also, apart from listening to me, I think the internet would be of great help to you. There are a lot of good people who've written a lot of good books on this. One of the books I am following is Python Data Structures and Algorithms. It is a very good book. It will, take you from, it won't take you from scratch, but obviously it will assume you know somewhat about Python. But if you don't, if you have an issue, you can use this other book, Python Crash Course and Introduction to Python. These books, these are very, very easy. Like reading them is like reading a bedtime story for people who are good at coding and even those who are not. Because once again, Python is not something to be stressed over. It's a good language, it's a nice language. With that being said, thank you for listening to me in this first video and just listening to me and not doing anything. Thank you, and I'll see you the next time.